First of all, it's just very difficult to run an outbound motion. You have companies that have many SDRs, SDR leaders, managers, directors, VPs, full-time people focusing on this project, tons of software and tech spend, and they still struggle to hit their quotas because it's very difficult to do outbound. You have to do list building and targeting and copywriting and sending and regular activity, monitoring the campaigns, iterating on the feedback, deliverability, inboxes. There's like a million moving parts. I have another post coming out with Clay about this, so I won't go too into detail. But deliverability is just getting super difficult and unpredictable, and you kind of feel powerless for your clients. I had clients that were doing great, getting leads every single day, that just all of their inboxes went to zero open, zero responses overnight, literally. I have a screenshot in the post I'm talking about where it just shows you like, just it dies, like it fell off a cliff. And you don't want to be in a position where you're in that situation for clients, so I felt like we had to pivot. Interesting, yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's an awesome company. I think we should start a little bit with a quick introduction of ourselves, and then maybe we can talk more about this. It's a little bit out of order, but yeah. So I'll start. Sculpted is a consulting service specifically built for Clay customers. That's why we call it Sculpted. Clay Sculpted. Clay is very moldable, but you need to know how to use it. It's a powerful product, but it's complex, and you have to be an expert in not only the product itself, but go-to-market strategies and technology like APIs and web scraping a lot to really push it at least to its limits and get the full potential out of it. So a lot of customers, my customers hire me to help them, I guess, activate and realize value much faster with the product. I found Clay when they were less than $1 million in revenue back in, I think, the end of 2023, in like September, really the summer of 2023. So almost 2 full years ago, about a year and a half ago. And I fell in love. It solved the problem that I had in outbound for years. I had closed $1 million in sales myself, cold email, and worked as the first go-to-market guy at a tech startup and managed SDRs. And I've seen the problem as a rep and as a manager, and like the problem solved with outbound was tremendous. You either have a giant list of spray and pray, or you're doing tons of manual work to try and assemble a solid list, and the existing data providers just weren't cutting it. So I fell in love with Clay. I started using it a ton. They took notice. I met the team in the office back when they were, I think, 2 offices ago in like a loft in Williamsburg, and just kept in touch with them. And somehow clients just sort of found me, I guess, like inbound from Clay referrals, from LinkedIn, and then the consultancy was born. So I left my full-time job about a year and a half ago, and yeah, I've been helping customers with Clay ever since. So that's me.
Nice, nice. I guess a quick intro of myself. Joe. I come from an operational background, so I was at Uber in the early days for a few years. Then I was a co-founder at a YC seed stage. Over the past few years, I've been doing a lot of consulting and sort of service-based businesses, helping early stage startups. I now run the Workflow Company, which is a GTM engineering consultancy agency that helps growing tech startups help automate and streamline their go-to-market operations with automations and the AI. And obviously, Clay is one of the sort of cornerstones of our practices. We use it every day, as well as certain other tools, depending on sort of the problem that we face and the solution that we devise for our clients.
We had crossed paths a little over a year ago when we were first starting out, and we somewhat stayed in touch, and now sort of we're kind of circling back and just wanted to cover how we've seen the Clay landscape evolve and the go-to-market landscape evolve over the last year, talk a bit about our agencies, the struggles we face with doing outbound, and sort of how we're pivoting. And it's actually pretty timely as well because of the recent fundraise. We're recording this the day after Clay announced their $1.25 billion valuation with a Series B raise. And everyone's pretty hype about it. So I thought it'd be cool to cover that topic and then discuss I guess, sort of how we contributed. Because we did contribute slightly, right? Like, we helped talk about Clay a lot, and we helped a lot of customers with Clay. So we were somewhat part of that journey, a small piece. We helped, a very small piece. So it'll be cool to discuss sort of how we've seen it evolve over the last year.
Yeah, sounds good. It's a Series B extension, right? And I think I read it on maybe Kareem or Varun's LinkedIn post. These are the 2 co-founders of Clay. And one of them, I think, says something like, "Oh, like we've barely touched any of the cash that we raised from the original Series B." And at that point, I think they were valued at $500 million.
Yeah.
And then I think their investors kind of almost like thrust this like extra money on top of them, even though they had no need for it or immediate need for it. and they basically more than doubled their valuation. So I
Why do
think
you
they'll
think
be
they
good
did
for a
that?
while.
I know they 6x revenue in 2024, but like, why do you think the investors wanted to give even more money? They wanted a bigger piece, or what? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. If they didn't need the money, like maybe locking in valuation, maybe the investors got enough confidence that the company could be really big, and so they just wanted uh, to give maybe the founders and early employees a chance to sell some of their shares in the secondary market, to the new investors or the existing investors. That way, maybe the co-founders and the early employees don't have to worry about, like, is this gonna turn out to be zero or whatever? Like, we've locked in some of our wins, and now we can really focus on building a really big company.
Right. Yeah.
That's a complete conjecture. So, like, I have no idea, but that's one
Right.
guess.
Yeah, I was gonna ask actually, how much of Clay is part of your day to day versus like Airtable or other like other tools like Zapier or Make or like because it seems like you're less. I'm pivoted. I'm positioned more with Clay specifically, and we do sometimes use other things, but generally we're using Clay as the core thing that we're implementing. It sounds like you are more broad. I'm curious, is that accurate or like how
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
balance with everything else?
that's accurate. My stack, I think, changed a lot in the early days of the agency, which was, only about just over a year ago. And back then, I think a little bit of context in 2024, both you and I, for the majority of 2024, I think we both focused a lot on outbound, and we'll talk more about this. But when I was focused on outbound, Clay probably accounted for at least 80% of my day to day workflow. Now that I've sort of switched over to doing a little bit more system architecture, recurring processes, and so forth, we're starting to migrate some of our more recurring workflows away from Clay. And so I'll probably put it at about 50 Clay, 50% Clay, and then 50% other tools in the stack. So, like AirOps is something that we use a lot for the automation rails because they have really good out of the box functionalities that are specific to like prompt engineering. And then we also do custom coding for things that require scraping or certain API endpoints that we just need to manipulate the data and so forth. So yeah, 50-50.
That's pretty cool. First of all, it's just very difficult to run an outbound motion. You have companies that have many SDRs, SDR leaders, managers, directors, VPs, full-time people focusing on this project, tons of software and tech spend, and they still struggle to hit their quotas because it's very difficult to do outbound. You have to do list building and targeting and copywriting and sending and regular activity, monitoring the campaigns, iterating on the feedback, deliverability, inboxes. There's like a million moving parts. So doing that for 30 different customers already is difficult. Doing it for yourself full time is hard. Doing it for 30 clients at once is way harder to do it well. Um, and then from a business perspective, like your customers when you do outbound are depending on you for their success, and they count on you to get them leads at the end of the day. And pending you do all those things I just mentioned properly, it's still difficult to get results because a lot of the success hinges on the client's offer. It could be just a bad offer. It could be bad for outbound. For example, SaaS products usually don't really help customers gain any value until a few months of a rollout where you integrate all their systems. So it's like very hard to articulate that much value in like one sentence of an email. So it's just difficult. And the thing that really screwed us was deliverability. I've spoken. I have another post coming out with Clay about this, so I won't go too into detail. But deliverability is just getting super difficult and unpredictable, and you kind of feel powerless for your clients. I had clients that were doing great, getting leads every single day. That just all of their inboxes went to zero open, zero responses overnight. Literally, I have a screenshot in the post I'm talking about where it just shows you like just it dies, like it fell off a cliff. And you don't want to be in a position where you're in that situation for clients. So I felt like we had to pivot, and I didn't want to be on the hook for these client results. It was way too much work to try and get a client success, and there were so many factors out of your control. That's kind of what I learned over the last. We've been in business for a year and a half. The first year was outbound. The last 6 months we've been pivoting, but I don't want to talk about that yet. I'm just curious. Maybe you can share as well your experience with the early days of the Clay services and like how you saw things evolve.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this before recording this, but a lot of our experiences I think overlap in terms of Outbound being not fully under the service provider's control, right? And I think deliverability was and still is probably one of the key drivers of that. And when you think about the issue of deliverability, there are so many actors in that ecosystem. It's no longer just about how good your email campaign is or how good your copy is or how good your segmentation is. You're literally having to set up the entire infrastructure of sending your email and trying to get that to land in somebody else's inbox, which might be hosted by Google Outlook or another server, right? And so there's a lot of different actors with conflicting interests in this system of email deliverability, and you don't have any control over what the other actors are doing. And I think what we're seeing, especially since Clay came onto the scene, is the tragedy of the commons playing out, where everyone is starting to do a lot of, for the lack of better words, like spamming, right? Like a lot of people, good for them, discovered Clay and are starting to send thousands of emails on a daily basis. And if you sort of extrapolate that to the future, you can see everyone starts doing the same thing, and then no one's going to actually start reading cold emails or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so this sort of finite resource of goodwill and trust that others, if you put forth a good cold email with a good offer in front of them, that they'll read it and that they'll respond to it, that goodwill is being eroded because everyone is taking advantage of it for their own business, right? And so I think, to be fair, like I still do outbound for a couple of my existing clients from 2024. It is very difficult to get deliverability right at all times because it just shifts all the time. And then on top of that, to come up with the copy, the campaign angle, and all of that. So to be fair, I think again, it's okay that it's a lot of work. Like it's supposed to be a lot of work. Like you're providing a lot of value, right? But the fact that you don't feel to always have full control over it, and that you have to be reactive to events happening outside of your control, makes it
Hmm.
quite challenging to build a resilient business around it.
Right. And you don't even know necessarily like what's causing it. Like I'll just give you an example. This is really the main issue. Like yeah, it's a good point you made. Like oh, like these agency owners, it's a lot of work. Boohoo. It's like yeah, you charge 10K a month, dude. So you better do a lot of work. But like it's okay to do a lot of work, but it should be something that it has to be consistent and predictable and repeatable. And a lot of the issues that come up with deliverability are undiagnosable. It's like driving a car. My co-founder said you're driving a car and you hear like a noise and you bang on the steering wheel and it goes away and you're like, oh, that must have fixed the problem. But then it kind of starts again. So maybe you like jiggle the wheel a little bit. You don't really know what's going on. And meanwhile, there's VIP passengers in the back seat. They're like, everything okay up there? And you're like, don't worry, buddy, everything's fine. We're gonna get there just fine. And you're kind of just guessing. And so I'll give you a two quick examples to illustrate this point. I had a customer. We were really excited about what we were doing for them. They're like a review management software. And we essentially built this Clay workflow that could take. They sold to like franchise businesses like McDonald's or like Starbucks, like those kinds of companies, 7-Eleven. What they do is they help monitor all of your Google My Business listings, scrape all the reviews, use AI to analyze them, and bucket like the bathrooms are gross or like the food sucks. Whatever the issue is, it's hard to see at a corporate level across all your locations. So that's what they do. So we wanted to scrape all of their stores and like find like a bunch of locations, scrape all the AI, all the reviews, use AI to like bucket the sentiment, and then create like an email that's like, hey, we checked 30 of your locations in these areas. We found that you know the average rating was like across this many reviews was like 3 stars, and the most common complaint was dirty bathrooms. And here's an example of a review that we found in like a really cool custom email. What we found was that we validated the whole email list with an Everbounce product to like see that they all were valid, and then there was a like 70% bounce rate somehow. And I think a lot of it had to do with these like super corporate like retail brands. They have like these specific, some kind of special, I don't know what it is, some kind of defense against cold emails, like an IT department, a firewall, whatever it is. And like all of our inboxes were shot and the client was pissed. He's like, what happened? I thought you guys are professionals, right? Why did they all bounce? And I'm like, we did everything we normally do. I'm sorry, I don't know. And I wouldn't have even known that when I took the client on. I'd never worked in the industry before. Another example was a customer we had a few months later doing really well. They got tons of emails. We essentially recreated a handwritten email that one of the reps was doing that was getting tons of leads, but it just took forever. So we just automated it, and it was working great. We got a few leads a day. They had actual pipeline opportunities. That's another thing. A lot of leads in like outbound agencies are like a somewhat positive response. We had actual deals in the pipeline coming through from our outbound, and then overnight they just turned off. And we tried so many things to try and test and see what could solve the problem, and like it was just not clear what was solving it. And that's, I think, my aha moment when I was like, I had seen this many times in different ways, but for some reason this time it was like, okay, like even this client who's getting tons of positive replies and doing great, if they're failing and I can't fix it, like I don't know, what am I gonna do? Yeah, my hands are tied.
Quick question: What are your thoughts? And this is a bit tangential, but like, what about other delivery mediums? So instead of email, right? Because we agree a lot of deliverability issues. What about LinkedIn or cold calling? What are your thoughts on that?
So if I were to do any channel right now, I would personally do cold calling. Um, I think that like you know cold calling is the best way to reach somebody. I think because you can get a live conversation, you can talk to a human. If you're good on the phone, you can overcome objections. You can learn a lot faster. And outbound's a lot about iteration. So when you send an email or a LinkedIn message, people can ignore you, or they can just respond with no or one word. And like that's all you really get. You don't learn a lot when you get on the phone. Even if they try and brush you off, you can listen to why they're saying no, and you can try and fight it off in the moment. But you can also get a lot more feedback to change your approach for next time. So I think cold calling is the best way. It's also, I think, the easiest way to reach people if you're using verified mobiles only. I would only cold call nowadays if I was calling verified mobiles, or I was calling into an industry like which I wouldn't want to do. But if you're selling to local businesses, you can call a generic company number, and usually the owner will just pick up because it's a small business. I don't like selling to those companies, but that is an option. However, it's interesting. I think outbound will always be a thing. I think there's always a way. If you can get the right message in front of the right person and stand out, then they will be interested. Like I thought when I was younger in my career that learning sales and outbound specifically was the best skill I could possibly learn because it would mean that I would always have income theoretically, unless it's like a giant war, God forbid. But if I can go to a stranger and convince them, I once sold a deal to a $150,000 deal. It was aided by my VP of sales, but it was largely run by me. I closed a $150,000 deal with someone who I emailed and who did not know me before. So, and I think that's always going to be possible if you can hit the right person with the right message at the right time and do it in the right way. So fine. But in terms of other mediums, it's a good question. I think it's just going to get harder and harder. Like email, email's going down, but people say, what about LinkedIn? What about phone calls, like you said? So on that, I think I wouldn't do LinkedIn because LinkedIn also will ban you. They also don't want you abusing their system. LinkedIn doesn't want people setting up automated tools. That's the whole thing. By the way, I think email's the same way. I think if you send a one-to-one email or a one-to-one LinkedIn message, then it's fine. I do it all the time, and I get tons of positive replies. I book meetings, right? But I'm actually sending a one-off email. I don't think email providers and LinkedIn and social media companies, I don't think they mind someone trying to use their product to reach out to a prospect and offer them real value. I think they care when you try and use AI to like automate a bajillion emails and blast. So I think that's where you get into trouble. And so LinkedIn also, if you set up a profile, you set up a LinkedIn tool, it's clear in their terms of service, and I've seen this happen many times, that you'll have your profile banned. And that's really a problem if you're like us, where we use LinkedIn for content and trying to like actually have like meaningful conversations and create an audience. Phones also, like phone numbers go to spam. A lot of the common dialing tools now allow you to just buy internet numbers because they just get marked as spam so quickly. And so same thing, like it's a very similar issue across the board. I think new like clever ways of reaching out to people by industry will form. So for me, for example, one thing I've been doing that I'm going to share now, which I haven't told anyone, but I set up Slack alerts in the Clay Slack community for keywords and other Slack groups. And whenever someone mentions a keyword that I care about, I get notified and I can jump into the conversation. And I have my Slack profile headlines is like my name plus what I do. So I can if it's like an obvious, like someone asking for like a proposal or something, they want help, then it's obvious you can just pitch. But if it's more of a question, I'll still jump in and I'll like answer them. I've had many meetings booked by answering questions and they just reach out to me privately and ask me for a meeting. And one of my best customers came from that solution. Yeah. I can also like, what I'll do is I'll then go on their LinkedIn profile. I have an extension called Surf where I can just click a button and they go into my HubSpot and I add the Slack message that they wrote. So I have a database of all the people in Slack in HubSpot that have asked a question relevant to what I do that are in the right title and ICP. So I'm generating a list that way. I think it's going to move more in that direction versus just doing like totally cold outbound. So, I don't think outbound's dead, but I think people are going to have to get more creative with how they do it. And I think that doing one-to-one outbound is going to come back, but automating the research component, not the outreach component. That's what I think is going to be the next step, and that's where I'm headed. So anyway, I guess we're kind of
Hmm.
wrapping up. Just to kind of speak out sort of what I'm focusing on now. Maybe you can too, and where people can find us. I now have pivoted, sculpted away from outbound entirely. We focus exclusively on CRM enrichment. HubSpot is on our homepage, although I'm still thinking maybe. I think at some point I want to go out market the Salesforce, but right now we're focusing on HubSpot specifically. We want to be the best possible shop for you to connect Clay to your CRM. A lot of customers come to us because they want to do a CRM cleanup. They have a lot of messy records, duplicates, spam, incomplete data sets. They have a giant list and they don't know which accounts to focus on, things like that, due to poor visibility into like the nuances of things you like we already discussed. You can't figure out without a person. So we'll come in and we'll clean up their whole data set. We map their data model, everything they want, all the data properties and field types and output values, everything they want for their account record, their contact record, etc. And um, and we then build it in Clay. We write custom code if needed, and we backdate their whole CRM database. Then we connect Clay to their CRM for ongoing automation to re-enrich and keep it clean over time, because otherwise the data will decay. We can track for job movers, things like that. You can intercept new records from form fills before they get into the CRM to clean them up. We can do deeper enrichments, more expensive on smaller subsets of data for like an ICP study, things like that. That's a very common use case, um, and that's what I'm focusing on now. I want to become no longer an outbound service, but rather a service that helps you keep your CRM data clean and healthy and up to date, because that's the foundation of your whole business. That's how you look at reports of what worked last year and what didn't, and how can we make more strategic decisions around investment and where we focus. That's how you, even things like sending marketing campaigns. If you have like messy company names like Inc. and LLC and messing first names, you're just going to look like an idiot when you send emails to customers that should be to prospects and they have messed up names. Like there's big problems and there's also just small tactical issues. It's supposed to be the foundation and motherboard of your entire go to market and your biggest asset. But I found that a CRM often becomes a company's largest liability, and we're trying to fix that. Um, and that's actually also, I think, just to continue on, I think that's where Clay is going to go to continue expansion. I think that they also realize the challenges of outbound, and while outbound is still a core component, and they still probably have lots of room to go with outbound, and they will still cater to outbound. I think serving as a broader, more of like a data tool than an outbound tool, right? That was too broad when they started, but now that they've gotten a foothold, they can start to be more broad and think more. And I think, for my why I bet on CRM and why I think they will too, somewhat at least, is it's much more durable. You're not fighting algorithms. You're not like worrying if someone. You're not having to generate leads. You're not emailing firewalls. You're just connecting two tools, and everyone's on the same team. Like the CRM wants Clay to be connected, and Clay wants to connect to the CRM. So everybody's on the same page. You're not like trying to get around algorithms all endlessly and fight the Google algorithm to hit the inbox. So I think incentives for all parties are much more aligned, and it's much more of a durable business. And there's many, many, many more companies. I think every company needs their CRM to be cleaned up, honestly, and
Yeah.
Clay's the best way to do it. So that's why we're betting there.
No, I absolutely agree. It's a huge market, and maybe not every company is aware of it, but just the lift and improvement you can see in terms of everything that you do. Like you said, even just the tactical stuff like cleaning up company names so that your outreach feels a lot more natural when you do it programmatically. Yeah, there's so many use cases, and I think focusing your business on cleaning up and enriching your CRM is a really good starting point. And I think I largely agree with that viewpoint, and so that's something that we provide for um, our clients as well. But for the time being, I think for us at the Workflow Company, we try to take a little bit more of a consulting approach to working sort of one-on-one with our clients and really kind of determining where can you see the highest ROI from from adopting some sort of cutting edge GTM engineering practices, right? Is it from defining your total addressable market and then going on to sort of enrich that entire market, or is it in the way you do outreach? Instead of relying on email, which, like we said, can be a little bit problematic, do we actually want to focus on targeted outreach with LinkedIn? But maybe we can afford to create a micro landing page for each customer, right? And really hone in on unique value prop that speaks to that person's persona, for example, right? Um, and so we're testing a lot of different ideas because, like the possibilities with AI, I think, are really endless right now, and we're just at the very beginning of what's possible. And so largely agree with your view on why CRM enrichment is so important, and that it's definitely a service that every company can use. Um, but we like to take a bit more of a, like, let's actually sit down, figure out what your business might need. You probably do need CRM enrichment, but what else do you need, and can that bring you quicker results or outcome? So that's what we're going to be doing probably for the next 3 to 6 months. And then maybe when we catch up again, I'll tell you, yeah, we decided to niche down to like this one thing or another thing. But right now,
Right.
there's just so many possibilities, and it's an exciting to be
You gotta
time
learn.
to be in this space.
If anyone liked your pitch, how can they find you?
On LinkedIn, so I'm yeah, under my account, Joe Rhew, JoeRhew. Uh, Connect me with me on LinkedIn, and then we can take it from there.
Same. Jacob Two Weiner. I am also active on LinkedIn or
Perfect.
sculpted.agency. But it
Nice.
was nice catching up and definitely curious to hear, like, yeah, a year ago now I was like, Outbound's the move, let's do it, go, go, go. And now I'm like, yeah, Outbound sucks, let's do CRM. So I wonder where I'll be holding in another year from now. Hopefully still
Yeah.
CRM.
We'll schedule another time for, yeah, a
Yeah,
year down the road and see where we're at.
sounds good.
All right. Nice
Okay,
catching
great.
up with you, Jacob.
For sure.
See ya.